Hey, this is Pablo Hidalgo from Lucasfilm, and you're listening to Coffee with Kenobi with Dan Z, or Zed for Canadian and British listeners. This is the podcast you're looking for.
If you could escape at any time, what did you need our help for?
Without a ship, what use was freeing myself from the cell?
There's a million ways to make it look like something is floating. Name one. Repulsor lift, tractor beam, magnets, mirrors. String. String? Like a really thin string.
Now who could that be knocking on my door?
Hello, Kim. It's me.
Crimson Jack, you're looking well.
You see, your home has been purposely hidden from the rest of the galaxy. There is no map to At Attin.
This is Ashley Eckstein, Ahsoka Tano from Star Wars The Clone Wars and Star Wars Rebels, and you're listening to Coffee with Kenobi with Dan Z.
Hello, friends, and welcome to Coffee with Kenobi. I am your host, Dan Zehr, delighted to talk Star Wars with you. Since May of 2013, I've been committed to creating a positive, family-friendly, spoiler-free place for our Star Wars community. Imagine walking into your favorite coffee shop and joining a lively discussion about Star Wars films, Disney Plus live action, animation, books, comics, collectibles, or Star Wars experiences at the Disney theme parks. My hope is to bring that sense of community to this podcast, my website, special events, live video experiences, email newsletter, and more. Join our Star Wars community at coffeewithkenobi.com and be part of something special. Thank you to the official travel partner of Coffee with Kenobi, MEI and Mouse Fan Travel. Please go to coffeewithkenobi.com/mousefantravel for a no-cost, no-obligation quote to Walt Disney World, Disneyland, the cruise lines, Adventures by Disney, or anywhere else you are interested in going to on vacation. And please let them know that Coffee with Kenobi and Dan Zehr sent you. On today's show, I am joined once again by Tom Gross and Father Jimmy as we look at the third episode of Star Wars Skeleton Crew. So pull up a chair, grab your favorite mug, and have some coffee with Kenobi. Very interesting, as an astrogation problem. That's right, that is the title of the third episode of Star Wars Skeleton Crew. I'm your host, Dan Zehr. Very excited to talk with all of you about this, this series that's really turned a lot of heads in the best way possible. You heard them last week, and they did such a good job. There was so much applause. Now, there it still is, so we're going to bring them back. First up, from Teachers in the Dungeon, Tom Gross.
Hello, everybody. It's great to be here. Great to be back to CWK. Good to be with you, Dan, and can't wait to talk about Skeleton Crew.
Yes, I'm excited to talk about it, too. It's nice to have, I'll say my little chats, little expressions for later, but let's bring in our other co-host. He is also returning. This is your fourth or fifth time on the show now. Father Jimmy. Father, welcome back.
Great to be back. It's always a joy to talk with you guys, but a greater joy as well to talk about this great show.
We take a look at these episodes and we give one word to share sort of our overall reactions to it, and then just give a brief summation of how the episode kind of landed for us. So, Father Jimmy, we'll start with you. Give me one word and overall thoughts on the episode.
My one word, and it took me a while to come up with this, but I came up with trust as my one word, because I think all of the characters have been building trust with each other over this episode, and that was really tested in many ways. But at the same time, I think there's still a question mark on that word trust. In some regards, we don't know the background, especially of Jod and kind of the background of a lot of the things going on. But so that's why I chose trust.
Okay.
I thought this was a great episode. To me, it went faster than all the two other episodes so far. When it was done, and I hit pause to exit the screen, I realized, I was like, wow, 40 minutes. It seemed shorter because everything was going so quickly and so well, and I was so kind of zoned in.
Right. So I like it. So it sounds like it made a good impression on you, Tom. What about you? Tom does not have a good poker face, so I can tell he's very excited about this. Am I right?
Of course I am. Yes. What I'm excited about is my number 2 word was going to be skepticism, but that's not what I went with. I just to go with mystery. And instead of giving my impression of the show, I have this little showrunner that I think we could go with, and it's who is the supervisor? What is the barrier? Will Jod help the kids? Why don't the children know about Aldron and the war? What is Kayem? These questions and more this week on the Skeleton Crew, and it landed for me for sure.
I like that. Was very much like an old radio serial promotional.
Hey, thank you.
I like it, like the Bud Collyer Supermans. My word for the 3rd episode is wonder. This entire episode, I think, is the best of the 3. It was the one when I got to see an advanced selection of these that I was the most excited about. And it just brings a complete sense of wonder. I kept watching this, and I thought about what Father Jimmy said last week. I just kept watching it, and putting myself in the mindset of a child. Imagine being a child, and this is your gateway into Star Wars, with new creatures, new to even us. We get to meet a new species that we've never seen in Star Wars before. We get to see much more of Jod, the Crimson Jack character, played by Jude Law, who is an absolute, he's just incredible. He is just so charismatic, so personable, so charming, and you understand why, even though there are so many telltale signs that this is not someone to trust, you can see why he's been able to win so many people over. It's just the whole episode is a wonder, and I'm just delighted to talk about it with the two of you. So we'll throw it to you, Father Jimmy. What are some things you want to talk about with the episode? What kind of stood out to you?
Yeah, like I said, with my word trust, one of the things that stood out to me was just one step after another. Especially the kids, they were questioning him. They were wondering if he's true, if he's not. But also with trust, and Dana, you were saying with wonder, there's a real kind of childhood aspect of it. Mm-hmm. I think it's very early on in the episode when they're questioning who he is, and he says, "Oh, I'm Jod," and then immediately Wim and Neil are like, "Oh, so good to meet you," and they go to shake his hand. And to me, that was just such a great childlike response. They're so trusting, they're so loving as well. I thought that was really a great moment where we first see them actually interacting. There was minimal interaction at the end of the last episode,
right?
So here we finally get to see them together.
And the cast has already clicked for me. Like the chemistry is already very rich. I feel like, now I'm not an actor. I mean, I couldn't even imagine what it would be like to sync up with your peers on set and to create that chemistry that I feel like once you've got it, it's invaluable, and it very much transcends onto the screen and into your heart. And I feel like with Jod, or unless he's calling himself Crimson Jack, more on that later, they all cement it. Like there's believability in they don't trust him, but they want to. The fact that they're naive kids, the fact that there is like a weirdness that Farah has over trusting them that just gives her the creeps, right? And it's right. Farah's the one who calls herself the captain, right? I'm still learning the names.
Fern.
Fern. Why did I say Fern? Why did I say Farah? Is there a Farah? Oh, that's the mom. The mother.
Oh, right.
Yeah, that's why. So it is Fern. Okay. I actually wore glasses this time, so I don't have any more excuses. So yes, anyway, I think you nailed it. The charisma and wonder of this cast, the childlike innocence, and the sense of adventure. Like at the end, when Jod lowers those cannons, and they jump on it, and Neil's the kid, right?
Mm-hmm.
Neil's the Elephant Kid.
Yeah, he's the one who's
Yeah.
trying. He's kind of sitting up in the cockpit. He seems a little bit nervous. It's just so exciting to see like that wonder that they all have. Tom, anything on that, or you want to jump into your first one?
Oh, that is my first one. And as I'm listening to you guys talking, I guess while you're looking at it through the eyes of the child, which you did that for me last week, but man, I really struggled this week for seeing this through the eyes of the child, because what I put was with my mystery, and this topic is who is this guy? Because he calls himself Jod Na Nawood with the kids. Then when he's back to get SM-33, that one pirate comes and sees him and calls him Captain Silvo, and he was a former crew member. And then SM-31 calls him Intruder, and then later on he is called Crimson Jack by Kayim. So I guess
Kim, actually.
Say again?
It's Kim, even though it's spelled.
Kim.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I'm just.
I had to listen to it 5 times to make sure I would say it correctly.
I'm being so literal there with the reading. Okay, so Kim, thank you. So I'm looking at this from the point of view of, I guess, the father, and like, I don't know about this guy. He has too much mystery to me to be comfortable around these children, and like I keep waiting for him to turn him in or to turn the ship around back to, like, when he flew by himself back to get SM-33, I was like, okay, what's going on here? And he did his job, but then everything from there just feels like SM-33 doesn't trust him and follows him around. Which, by the way, leads me to one of my favorite moments of the whole show, is when, I need to find it now, when SM-31 says to Jod, he says, "I'll tell you what I know." And he pokes him in the chest. Being SM-33 pokes Jod in the chest, and it hurts. He's rubbing his chest. He says, "I know they are from somewhere. And he walks away, and then he pokes his head back and he goes, Okay. So anyway, that pulls me away from this, but the last piece about Jod that just brings so much mystery to me, and I still, at the end of this episode, don't know how I feel about him, is Kim, before they arrive, calls for reinforcements. He's on his way. He's coming. Get help here. I'll try to stall him. I mean, that makes me nervous. So, and then he has to also pull a deal with the kids to let him back onto the ship. It just, I don't know. It just feels, it's either survival or there's something fishy going on.
So StarWars.com has, every week they have an episode trivia gallery, which they've done since Clone Wars. So I've always enjoyed looking at them for some behind the scenes and some little clues. And a thing. So when it comes to Jod, it says, and there's a picture of it, Jod's alias of Crimson Jack is an old pirate that first appeared in the original Marvel run of Star Wars comics, starting with issue number 7, published in October of 1977. But so that was non-canon. A more modern version of Crimson Jack has appeared in recent comics, who bears no resemblance to Jod. In fact, they show a picture. He's got long red hair, a big red mustache without any chin whiskers, and he's really muscular. So anyway, he bears no resemblance to Jod, indicating Jod has a habit of not being who he says he is. So just the fact that you've pointed out the multiple identities he has just in this episode, he's a nefarious fellow. I mean, he is, drum roll, a pirate. He is acting like a pirate. He's behaving like a pirate. That's why I said last week the whole, like, Captain Jack Sparrow thing. He's not like Captain Jack Sparrow. I mean, that's just more like archetypal pirate. But some of the behaviors and the dishonesty and, what are his intentions? Think about it. If he is pure evil, I mean, he does try to shoot Kime. And to me, why would you shoot that wonderful owl creature? But he does, or at least we see him shooting in Kim's direction. Did I say Kim?
Right.
I pulled a Tom Gross. I meant Kim.
Yeah, sorry.
That's okay. Just kidding. Like Star Wars names, they don't spell phonetically. They don't pronounce phonetically. So all rules are out. All rules are out. But this character, you don't trust them. But he doesn't appear to have any violent intentions or dangerous intentions, at least so far, because he willingly leaves the ship to go back and get 33. He willingly risks his life, goes back there where he escaped from prison in that brig, knowing he was going to be identified. He was identified. He had to sneak out. They were shooting at him in space. One lucky blaster shot, and he loses pressure in that cabin. Boom, done. Game over, Jod. And it doesn't happen. He even says, hey, don't push any buttons and escape. But he does it. He comes back. So why would he do that? Is he trying to prove that he's loyal? Is he legitimately altruistic? Seems unlikely. But he's not showing any telltale signs besides the fact that clearly, if once you cross him, he makes you so mad that they want to have him turned in to the New Republic, right? So very interesting. That was a long-winded way of explaining. I like this character so much. He's so interesting, and it's hard to say if he's complicated or not because we don't know anything about him. Right. But the fact that we've got these little clues where we're sort of being winked at, but we're also not being winked at, I just find him so fascinating. I'm just going to keep that for my first point because he is the glue to this thing. I already liked the first 2 episodes a lot, but this is the episode where I thought, now this is an all-time character for me, perhaps so far, which I don't just throw out. So we'll go back in reverse order. Tom, what is the next one on your list?
So the next one on my list is the opening of the episode, where we're back to At Attin, where the families are all together, and rightfully so, very concerned, and the security droid shows up, and they're looking for any news, and the security droid notifies them that they have exited the barrier illegally. And then there's quite some consternation, and the part that I want to talk about is what Wim's father says, and that he says, will the supervisor contact the Republic? So first, the supervisor is named a few times, and that goes back to my word of mystery. Who is the supervisor? And
no name, not identified at all.
Exactly, and so we know that there's some sort of isolation to this planet, and so who is the supervisor? We do get clues from a conversation later. We get a little bit more enticement, I guess, to the mystery a little bit later with the kids, but it's the idea that they are aware of the Republic. And so he asks the security droid, will the supervisor notify the Republic of this situation? And the security droid continues to state, and he just like a robot continues to repeat himself, any violation of planet-wide provisions will result in security action. There's another line that he says that I guess I didn't write down. But no matter what they say, the security droid keeps speaking. So I guess my point here is, while the planet is isolated, the adults seem to have an idea of what is going on outside the world, whereas the children do not, because when Kim asks you something about their awareness of planets, what do you learn in school? One of the children replies, well, we study planets like Coruscant and Alderaan. And she says, Alderaan? Don't you know about the war?
And she laughs.
Yeah. And then it's, what does she say right after? She she chuckles after they say, well, no, what war? Interesting, or something like that. So I don't know. I want to bring it up just because of the mystery aspect to it, that we're still piecing together the puzzle of At Attin and what its importance is as far as the isolationist goes.
Well, and that, Father Jim, you want to add to that? I've certainly got something I want to say about that.
Yeah, I think for me, that's part of the big mystery of what we're figuring out. Kind of how long have they been in isolation? What's going on? Because I didn't get the impression that the parents were as aware of what's going on in the rest of the world. Because just because they call it the Republic doesn't necessarily quite indicate what era.
That's a good point.
Republic could have been during the prequels. I don't know if
it could be the New Republic. It could be, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if the characters in the High Republic called it the High Republic. I can't remember for certain. They may have just called it the Republic, and so there is this sense of that they have been hidden from the rest of the world for a long time, but we don't quite know when or why. And I think that's one of the coolest kind of mysteries of it right now.
Mm-hmm.
I agree. That's one of the most intriguing parts to me about this, where we have like an actual mystery. The fact is, when you see these security droids, it is hard for me. Now, I've had more time to marinate on this because I've been thinking about this for a long time. So I'm glad we're getting to talk about it. The security droids, they're not like a typical protocol droid, because they're not protocol droids. But there's nothing anthropomorphized about them. I guess they wouldn't be anthropomorphized because they're not an inanimate object. They're a droid. But they don't have facial features. What do they have? They have a camera. What does a camera do? It watches you. It videos you. It looks at you. It gives other people a glimpse into what you are viewing. It's hard not to think of 1984. I hope I'm not breaking my own cardinal rule here. But to me, everybody on this planet is trapped, and they don't know that they are trapped. And I think it's apparent by the way the mom, the dad, and the two moms are sitting there, and they're panicked, and the security droid placates them. They're very tall and lanky. Again, they're just cameras. And we hear the name of the supervisor, and everybody has to do something with money or take care of money. And then when you're in these schools, you were raised and trained, and you have to pass your, I don't remember the word they use, your exams. I guess it's probably exams. That's not exactly a tricky Star Wars name. So that you can be prepared for the next phase of your life. But if you're not allowed to leave the Great Barrier, and no one's clearly coming in to see you, then you're trapped. I think everybody's trapped. I don't think the parents have any idea. And the fact that Wendell, the father of, what is his name?
Wim,
yes. Mm-hmm. Where do I not see it on my little list? I don't know. Wim. That's right, because he's full of whimsy. He takes off his glasses. To me, I found that to be symbolic of he's removing the clarity that the glasses might provide, but he's also taking away any barriers between what the reality is and what he can and can't see. And I'm really English teaching this thing to death. But, if you've listened to the show at all for the last 11 years, you should not be surprised by that at all. So I think there's so much more going on. I think that's the great mystery about this whole thing. At Attin, as Kim tells us, there were several planets that were considered the jewels of the Republic. She just says Republic, not old news. She just says the Republic. Mm-hmm. And they were all destroyed. How are they destroyed? I don't know. Of course, it's hard not to think about the Death Star, but there could be a lot of reasons or a lot of ways that they were destroyed. And the only one left is At Attin, and it was erased from all of the maps. Even Kim, who has knowledge of 1,000 planets and their cultures, doesn't know at all. I think this is a really cool aspect, and that storyline, that aspect is more interesting to me than anything else going on in the episode, even though I like what else is going on. All right, well, I've taken up all of the time on the internet, so I'm sorry about that.
Well, actually, just a real quick comment on Wim's father and the glasses. I really like Wendell, where you're going with Wendell. Yeah. The other thing that I thought about was, if they have been manipulated this whole time, and he's the only one that actually saw what happened. He saw the kids take off in this ship that's been hidden for years and years, apparently. And so is he in disbelief of his own position? Like, he takes the glasses off to just like, oh,
he's thinking. Yeah, he's
very
clearly thinking, and he's not talking. All he does is talk earlier.
Mm-hmm. So anyway, I thought that was interesting that the glasses piece, along with he's the only one who actually saw, like he's witness to this whole thing. So I don't know. I think that was cool.
What he's probably thinking is, I've got a bad feeling about this. Honestly, you can tell.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Father Jim, anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, I think it's interesting with him being the only one that saw the ship. I didn't think about that before. I guess I can't remember if the security droids had shown up at that point or not, but it really made me, just now, Tom, when you were bringing it up, made me question kind of just how much of a barrier is the barrier. If no one can find this planet, it's hard for ships to get in. If no one has a ship on the planet and they're all told it's illegal to leave, and no one's leaving. But this ship, for some reason, just went right through, came right in and out.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe the barrier is more of just a smoke screen. You tell everyone you can't get through it. It's cheaper than actually create a real barrier.
Like in the Truman Show, when they say you can't, you can't go past a certain point, and eventually just boom, runs into the wall.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's interesting, and we could be completely wrong, and I guess I'm completely speculating. But that, to me, those are just the narrative little clues that we have been provided.
Yeah. Another thought, just staying on this track with At Attin, was the fact that Kim goes to get a scroll to show these couple of planets, and I was trying to think, and we don't have much printed material in the Star Wars universe that I'm aware of.
It's true.
It's like the Jedi texts that they have in
Last Jedi.
Last Jedi, yeah, and I don't know why I was blanking so much.
That's okay.
And
I can never remember Wim, so I think that's worse.
And so At Attin must be like real old if it primarily is existing. The last they have of anything existing with it is printed material and not on like a holodeck or whatever the data pads. Yeah.
Sure. Holodeck. I like that. You might be on the wrong podcast.
I think so. Yeah.
But I like that. I've always liked the holodeck. I always said that was cool.
Yeah. The other priest I live with, he likes Star Trek and has brought up the holodeck several times. So I think that's why I was in my mind.
Coffee with Khan is the other show I'm releasing later. One thing I want to point out that's really fun is, and I didn't notice this until I read the trivia gallery on StarWars.com, but when they go to the observation moon, you hear this music. It's like it sounds like old sci-fi, and that instrument is called theremin, Theremin, and that is the instrument they use to make it. So it gives you that old school feel. This again is why I think I like this show so much. Tempted to say love the show, but I will wait and see until we see more of the episodes, because it is like the classic serialized Star Wars and Indiana Jones, where you're taking old school fun things like pirates, science fiction, mysterious aliens and creatures on a strange moon, and weird robots that might be spying on you. I mean, that's classic 50s science fiction, and we're getting it all in Skeleton Crew.
Interesting. It just, when you said that, I was thinking, okay, so we've had the Western pirate, we've had the fantasy genre, we've had the Western with Mandalorian, and really
the samurai with Ahsoka.
Yeah, and so now we get a pirate story.
Yeah.
Cool.
Pirate science fiction. When I was student teaching, one of my students said, I said something was cool, and the student said, "Is it Batman Ninja Pirate cool?" And I've always thought, to me, that is the level of cool that even the fonts could not ascend to.
Yeah.
And that might be what we have here. I've sort of lost track of who's next. I certainly got plenty on my list, but if anybody wants to go, just jump right in.
Yeah, I've got one real quick.
Yeah, go ahead.
And it's kind of a different direction, but one thing I noticed in this episode, especially when we get introduced to Kim, is the way that this series and maybe some other Star Wars series or shows out there, they use names of characters, and it seems so far two of the characters that have the least humanoid look, Kim and Neil, have the most like Earth-sounding name. And
Interesting.
I feel like that happens quite a bit in Star Wars. I'm sure it's intentional, but I just find that kind of fun and interesting that, you know,
It's a clever
we have
subversion on your expectations.
Yeah. And in one sense it helps. I found it helped me a little bit to be like, oh yeah, Kim. I know lots of people named Kim. I don't have to get over the barrier of this name that's not something I recognize.
Right.
Which helps because she's an owl that is into
Who?
maps. And yeah.
Oh, yeah, there it is.
Exactly.
I did it. I warned Tom. I warned Tom. Only reason I teach Harry Potter, so I can say that joke. Just kidding. I love the books.
Oh.
Anyway, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off with my owl pun.
No, that was it. Just I was really interested to see if you guys have thought about that before, or what you think about the naming of characters in general.
Sure. Well, I'll be thinking about that quite a bit.
Oh my goodness.
Sorry. People flock to this show. Okay, sorry.
geez.
I can't. I'm probably not done. Did you
Wow.
notice, by the way, how many of the fun little bird puns that Kim makes? She says she makes something. She says something about these kids flocking together. She has another one too, and I thought, what clever writing! What clever, fun writing that's not quite in your. It's not in your face, but it's there if you want to appreciate it. And I mean, what is great about that, guys, is that for me that means the creators of this series, the directors, the writers, they are assuming a level of intelligence of the viewer, where you can enjoy it at its basic level, and you can also kind of take it in another direction and see some of the little nuances of the piece. And I think that I love when a creator does that, because they are acknowledging, hey, these are intelligent consumers of the story. Let's give them something to enjoy. And I really like that.
Very similar to like children's cartoons of the 70s and 80s, where there's the very base kind of slapstick humor that kids love, bright colors, all that. But then when adults watch it, you catch the, a little bit more of the
nuance.
in-depth. Yeah.
Pixar, most of Pixar stuff is pretty great about that as well.
Yeah. That's a good one. Yeah.
So let's talk about Kim. Kim, when I watched this episode, I just had a feeling, because it was the third episode, that something was going to be special. I don't know why. And when they showed Kim's hand, I started to wonder, do I know this character? At first I thought it was Sid from the Bad Batch. But Sid was a traitor, which we didn't even see much about what happened with Sid after everybody got kidnapped, after Omega got kidnapped. But it wasn't. It was a new species. This she's like an owl monk sort of a creature, extraordinarily charming. The special effects, I don't know if it's a puppet or if it's CGI or maybe it's a little bit of both. I really don't know, and maybe it's already out there and it'll be obvious. But I found it to be incredible. And sometimes I find that extra droids and extra aliens and extra creatures, and sometimes I find it to be a little bit forced or gimmicky, and I'm like, come on, I'm barely keeping track of this. But I didn't feel that way at all about this character. She was very nurturing. She reminded me of like a hybrid of like a librarian or a wise old wizard or a mentor or a teacher. And it's just that guy that shows up in the story just to give you enough to get you on your way. And it's quite literal in this instance. Plus the history with Jod. And I thought, okay, this is a new character that doesn't feel anything other than a new authentic thing that makes Star Wars so special, is the uniqueness of the characters and the aliens and the species, where you feel like you've never seen it before, and yet you can't imagine how you ever enjoyed popular culture without it. I mean, Kim, I think, is an instant fan favorite to me.
You hit upon a lot of the things I was going to say about Kim, and that is one that, how interesting that the person who would be the best to know a secret like this or have the lore of this would be the wise owl. And so it was very fitting for that aspect. The second part that you had mentioned that came up in my mind with Kim is that nurturing side. It really was the one time where I felt like maybe Jod did the right thing, even though she's calling him out and is going to try to have him arrested. But he brings the kids to this owl who is very caring and very quite interested in their story. And they would probably be as interesting as subjects of knowledge for her as they would be, children to be a part of her life. The last thing I was going to say about Kim is how much she reminded me of Maz Kanata in having knowledge and background, and even the small stature of body and whatnot. And you have to go to a remote location to find. Now this is really remote. I felt like, this moon reminds me of when don't Yoda. Weren't the Luke and Leia born on a moon? And when Obi-Wan shows up at the moon, it's almost like an Earth moon with astronauts on the outside bouncing. Mm-hmm. That's what this reminded me of when they came to the moon. I was like, wait, have we been here before? I mean, I know there's thousands and thousands of moons, but nonetheless, it seemed kind of a cool setting. I really liked it.
It was beautiful. I agree with that. And even Kim's candor and her diction and delivery, even like when she says, "Oh, this will never do." It's like she's right out of the 100-acre wood. Like that's very much that Winnie the Pooh, kind of that warmth to it, which I feel like she talked like a character from a children's story, from a classic children's story, and looked like one as well. And I thought, this is absolutely brilliant. It truly is. It truly is.
Yeah, I thought she was a great character. I was very much looking forward to this character. I don't pour over posters or trailers too much. I'll watch the trailer and look at it, and but when you see an owl character featured on some of these things, I was like, oh man, I'm excited to see about that character. Similar to the Brutus character, the kind of wolf pirate. You're like, man, that looks cool. So for me, Dan, it was interesting to see how you were excited about this episode. You weren't quite sure what character was coming, because I almost had a little bit of a different experience when they were kind of that lead up and they weren't showing her right away. I was like, it's going to be the owl. We know this is coming. Partially because I wanted it to happen. But then I think as well, and Dan, you might not have gotten this because you got the episode a bit early, but on Disney Plus, the kind of title icon,
they show
was her. Yeah, and it's why once a series starts, I usually stop watching the stuff that comes out afterwards. I don't like to watch the episode recaps because I think they often give too much away. But so I didn't quite have that same experience of wondering who's coming.
I'm glad you brought that up, because I find it to be a massive misstep and a great disservice that happened, because when I saw it, there were no posters, there were no images. I was sworn to secrecy on all this stuff. I had no idea what this character was or what this character was going to look like. I had no idea there was going to be some sort of an owl, a new alien species situation that would be very charismatic. I had no idea. So I saw last week there were some posts about Funko selling Kim, and I thought, well, that's not cool. Like, that's how that character is revealed. I mean, it's not the same level as Yoda, but imagine seeing The Empire Strikes Back for the first time, or wherever you saw Yoda for the first time, and it's on like a cereal box or a little image that you have to click, that you have to look at to watch the video. So no wonder, Father Jimmy, you didn't have that experience. I'm assuming, Tom, you didn't either, because it shows you that. So that really takes away from the wonder of that reveal. So when I start talking about this early in the podcast, probably most of you listening are like, oh, I didn't get that at all. Of course it was the owl. Well, yes, because marketing, to me, this is, I don't know if it's a marketing thing or who chose that, but that's a big misstep. That really bums me out, because I feel like that takes away a little bit of the wonder.
Don't worry, Tom. Don't worry, Dan. Don't be too bummed. I still enjoyed the episode.
No, I know, but you know what I mean. Like
finished it.
That's why I don't watch trailers anymore, or if I can help it. That's why I try not to look at stuff, because those little fun reveals in the story. To me, that's everything.
And it makes me think of, Dan, you were victim of the granddaddy of them all spoilers right before seeing The Force Awakens. So yes, I know how you're super sensitive about that, and rightfully so.
I think the word you're looking for is PTSD. I think that's
yeah, right. Hey, so I have a question about this planet and how we've talked about how Kim is warm and wise and all of this, but what do you make of, and I don't have an answer for this, I'm just asking the question because I know I've got the smartest people I could possibly have in front of me to talk about this. And as Dan looks around, so when they come off of the ship, when they land on that moon, they come off the ship. I don't remember who says it. I want to say it was Neil, but it could be someone else. The individual, the child goes, "It's so cold. It's so cold," which to me foreshadows something bad is going to happen.
Isn't that KB that says that?
Oh, it is. Who would have that like mechanical
extra sensitivity to?
Yeah. So I caught that, but then as we got into the story a little bit further, I kind of forgot about it until now when we were talking about that. So what do you make of that? Why was that line so important to keep in this story?
Well, you often hear the word cold associated with the dark side of the Force. However, I think when I heard that, I'm like, there's that idea of isolation. There's that beautiful snapshot of them walking across the silhouette of that planet or the moon, or another moon or what have you, and they're just darkness surrounded by light, which is an interesting concept metaphorically. But it also is a reminder these kids are in space. Right? The atmosphere's there, but they've never been in space before. Nice. And when they were in space before, they were surrounded in that port. This is a whole new thing for them. This is like a brand new experience. And it's a reminder to us that even though they're in Star Wars and we're having some fun little adventures, these are innocent children put in a very dangerous situation by a guy who, on the surface wants to get them home, maybe get a little bit of reward, as he says. But this is scary. Like there's some scary themes underlying it, and I still think it's totally for kids. But I think that's what I get out of it.
Got it.
Yeah, I just thought she said it was cold because moons are cold. That was all I had.
You are probably 100% right.
Yeah.
Okay, that's awesome. I love it.
It's hard to kind of follow that, isn't it? What else do we want to talk about with this one? The whole thing with Jod running back to reclaim SM-33 was fun. Their back and forth that you mentioned earlier, Tom, I really enjoyed as well. The X-Wings show up, and then Jod again encourages innocent children to fire weapons at military/law. I mean, that again, if that isn't a sign to you that there's a problem here, because they weren't attacking them. They use a new weapon that are not on classic X-Wings to help. It looks like it's trying to immobilize them. Perhaps it's hard to say, but they escape. This is the third episode in a row with a really delightful little cliffhanger, which is also very much like the classic serials themselves. But it's fun, and I'm glad we didn't see in the X-Wing open up and see like a character from the Mandalorian or like Dave Filoni hopping out or something like that. I like I don't need to know. Every X-Wing pilot doesn't need to be someone that I can have on my shelf in 3 3/4 inch plastic or 6 inch if you're a Black Series person, and maybe that will be someone else later. But I don't know. I like that notion of even the Republic is having a hard time pursuing these guys, and there's just so much mystery to that as well. And it's almost presented like the Republic is bad or evil, but of course that's what someone who is on the more in the dark than the light, not from a Force perspective, but as far as his moral allegiances, of course he would put them in that situation.
Yeah, for me that was when you mentioned when he put the kids in those cockpits, that was one of the few moments so far that didn't quite land for me. I went, oh my gosh, is he going to try to get these kids to murder people?
Exactly.
Because
Exactly.
most of the time,
He is a pirate.
when you're trying to outrun X-wings or TIE fighters or whatever is chasing you, you blow it up. And I that really kind of hit heavy for me when I all of a sudden saw kids in this excited position where they might have to take a life. That
Especially Wim.
heavy.
Wim was so excited. But he does say, Joe does say, keep them away from us. He doesn't say blast them, kill them. He says keep them away. Like,
I did catch that as well, but it's still.
Oh, it's
even
there.
Before he said that, when he was putting them in there, I was like, they've never fired a weapon before. They don't know how to shoot to keep someone away.
Right. It's a great moment of characterization again to remind us that even though that's Jude Law, this is someone that we're getting the sense that we can't quite trust. Unless maybe we can trust him, and Kim is actually someone that you can't trust. I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah, hard to tell. It brings to mind, though, another humorous moment, if I may share, when the kids are talking about Jod, and they're discussing the Jedi, like levitation, telekinesis,
right.
And they're talking about the different ways that I think it's Fern says, well, there's lots of ways he could do it. Like it could be a trick or it could be a string, and someone goes, a string, and then like it just kind of hangs there, like a really thin string.
Which is a fun play on how special effects used to be done.
Yeah. But then that ties into that. Thank you very much. Is one of my favorite moments of science fiction, like looking at it, is when they are trying to escape from the pirate cove or the pirate land, and is it the Onyx Simber? Is that the name of the ship they're on?
I believe so.
So when the Onyx Simber is trying to escape and it's tethered, and they like are. I loved that. I love that concept because, hardcore science fiction, Star Wars, it's a force, it's a tractor beam, and a tractor beam invisibly pulls you back. Oh, not pirates. Pirates just tie you up, man. They tie you up to the dock and they stick you there, and that's how you stay. And I just thought it was cool the way he tried so many different ways. And even Captain, is it Bruno, says, oh, they're
Brutus.
Brutus, yes.
Yeah.
We don't talk about Bruno, as you know.
Yeah, that's
this
right.
This is a Disney podcast, sort of.
But he points out, they're caught on the line or whatever it is, and so I just thought, that's so. I gotta get back to that pirate thing. It's so cool that they're tied up instead. So
Errol Flynn.
Yes, very much so. So adds to the fun.
I'm glad you didn't take mine. My favorite funny moment, and there's some nice ones subtly sort of sprinkled throughout, is when Jod is going to get SM-33 and he's turning on these droids, and he turns on a battle droid, and the battle droid goes, "Did we win? Did we win?" Yeah. That was the worst battle droid impression ever. But man, I laughed so hard. I love battle droids because Mason used to get a kick of them. That was hilarious. Did we win?
For me, the funniest kind of small detail was when they're describing their ship, and they're like, "Well, it kind of doesn't work well. It smells bad," and then we see it, and it still has the cloud around it
of trash,
and it exactly like a comic strip, like Pigpen cloud, like a pink cloud that comes out, and it was just that. I think all of those little details. That are just strung kind of seamlessly throughout, or would really have made this such an enjoyable series so far.
And see, I agree, and it's all done to serve the story. Everything we've described somehow gives you a little bit of information about a character, about the purpose, about the plot. It's so well done, and I think that's one of the reasons why this is resonating so well. Is there anything else, gentlemen, that you would like to bring up, or are you ready for your letter grades? I'm good. I'm ready to give my final summation. Tom, you're shaking your head.
Small thing. Sorry.
No, go ahead, Father.
KB has a small line when her and Fern are talking about trusting Jod. And KB says, "We're just kids. We can't do this on our own." And I really appreciated that, because sometimes these type of shows paint adults as kind of inadequate. They can't help you, which is not how children should be. But they'd also kind of reinforce this idea that they are children. They're children, and they're lost with pirates, and they can't do it on their own. But yet they're with this guy who we don't know if we can trust. But I don't know, that line really stood out. We're just kids. We can't do this on our own. And that really, it really stuck. And I thought it really kind of framed a lot of, at least how I've been perceiving the series so far.
I love that. And that's actually quite astute when it comes to looking at children's literature, because often in children's literature, the parents are either not present or not compassionate or are not nurturing, or like they're the bad guys. They're the nuisance. They're the pain, the obstacle to the fun, to the adventure. And here's a nice reminder, even though we're in these certain situations, and this is Star Wars, we're children. We are children. And that's a good reminder that there's an innocence there that must be protected. And will it be protected? And is that part of why they need to stay back on At Attin? Like, is that what the Farah and Wendell and the other parents are thinking about? It's a really interesting idea that I think is worth so much more exploration. And I'm so glad I get to do it with the both of you.
Indeed.
So let's do our letter grades and final thoughts on this. Father Jimmy, why don't you go first?
Sure. I was very torn. This is the slightest bit off, but I gave it an A-.
Okay.
Partially, even though I enjoyed it very much, it was a great episode. Like I said, that having the kids in the position to take a life kind of hit me kind of a wrong note. And then also sometimes I felt like the scenes on the ship where there's just like, there's a skeleton there. And I was like, does nobody care that there's dead bodies in this ship? And that kind of, I don't know, that as well. I was like, yeah, like that used to be a person or something similar to a person. And
sure,
yes, we know Jod is the main one interacting with it when he pulls the dagger, but it kind of, those two very small things, in comparison to the other two episodes and the rest of this episode, kind of brought me down to the slightest A-. I don't know what technically an A- is, but
it's good. It's still very good. And I love that perspective, and I appreciate that, Father Jimmy, so much, because there is, at its core, some of the more profound things we're talking about with children and protecting their innocence. And I totally see that. The thing with the cannons certainly raised my eyebrow, but the pirate thing, the skeleton didn't, only because I thought this is like being on Pirates of the Caribbean at Walt Disney World or something like that, where yes, at its core there is something there, but there's also this idea of this is just this fun adventure, but it also isn't, because the kids are put in this situation. It's always around Jod, right? And I think that's something to keep in mind, because I think that's an important part of this. And I would like to think that he said, keep them away, and he didn't actually think they could actually hit anything. Not something I would do as a parent, of course. But yeah, he's a nefarious fellow. Again, it shows his character, but the moral implications of it are not lost on me either. So I really like that perspective. Tom.
Yeah. So this conversation, as it often does, weighs in on my final grade. Walking into this recording, this episode sat around a B or B- for me because of my just feeling disconcerted about Jod. I think outside of the context of the children, I think he's a super cool character.
Oh, yeah.
I'm just afraid of it just makes me uncomfortable, kind of the same way you were talking, Father Jimmy, with the putting them in the gun turrets and things like that. I just don't feel that I know enough about Jod yet to feel that the kids are safe.
And I think so that's by design too.
Yeah. And so I mean, yeah, so my grade may be a victim of how good this show is, because I just was feeling very off center because of that. Everything else I love about the show. But this conversation has kind of brought me around to like appreciating all the different nuances that you brought up, Dan, with Jod. And so maybe the concern shouldn't be there so much. And maybe I need to look at more, like look beyond the moments and pull back a little bit and look at the whole picture, that even though he puts them into certain situations, it seems in the long run to be getting them someplace. And my assumption is the place we want to go is back to At Attin, put the kids back to safety, let Jod go on his way as a Jedi, a pirate, a human being, whatever. So I'm willing to wait, and I'm going to bring that grade back up to an A. These shows have been so steady that I like them. But the conversation here helped me to bring this most recent one up. Another thing that could have affected and impacted my grade coming into this is, I will confess that I ended up watching it on my phone because, as I told you, Dan, I watched it very late at night, and I just was too lazy to I couldn't find the remote control for the TV. So I was like, I'm just going to watch it on my phone. And so, like, I missed the cloud around the Onyx, the ship. So I can't wait to go back.
It's funny.
And look for the the cloud that just cracks me up.
And
That's
like
hilarious.
Debris kind of floating and stuff.
I can't wait to see that. So anyway, it's an A for me.
An A. So we got an A and A minus, and I'm going to round it out. I'm going to give it an A plus. Look, the thing that I always get for me is the most important part of this sort of aspect is it's a good story, well told, with good characters, becomes a great story. This is a great story. This is a great Star Wars story. And what's happening with Jod isn't as alarming to me because it's not presented as a positive thing. It's like they're getting in the moment of the adventure, especially Wim, but we know as an audience that there's more to it than that, right? And of course, someone that is bad or doesn't have the best of intentions is going to make something attractive or appealing because that's what you do. That's what you do when your intention is to corrupt, right? And we're seeing that there. But in a very adventurous level, pirates in space, but not with obnoxious. Sometimes it says it'll be like there'll be a bunch of, there's old shows from like 70s, 80s, 90s where it'll be like pirates in space, but it's actually a pirate ship. It's in space, but they have swords and everything is the same except for the background. And I'm just like, this is not like that. Thank goodness. This is a great story, well told with really interesting characters and a fun mystery that doesn't insult the audience. Like there's an actual element of suspense here. And that's not always the case with stories. When you're told something is a mystery, but really it's not. This actually is. And it very much it just continues to tell great stories. And if you think I give everything an A+, I promise you, listen back to several of the old shows, that is certainly not the case.
Listening to Coffee with Kenobi, you are, with Dan Z, the podcast you're looking for. This is... yes.
I am going to say, though, my co-hosts, they are always A pluses, always bringing their A games, always a delight to talk to the both of you about, of course, Star Wars, but just anything, right? And so I want to thank you both again for coming on Coffee with Kenobi. Father Jimmy, I always feel silly even asking you this because you're like Batman. But if people want to get a hold of you, I think they should reach out to me. And unless you prefer smoke signals, would you like an owl sent your way?
Oh, yeah, owl would be great. That would be very helpful. Mm-hmm. I would appreciate the owl. That would be a good alternative.
I almost said who like 5 times besides the one time I did it. I controlled myself. It's personal growth. Tom, tell us about what's going on with Teachers in the Dungeon and your great blog.
We're looking forward to 2025. We got a lot of cool stuff coming up this next year. So thanks for asking about it. But I did want to say that Kim would fit really well in the Feywild of the Dungeons and Dragons world. So I'm imagining we're going to see some characters like Kim coming up and just out of just the joy of that new character. So, and the blog, again, doing the same thing, doing a lot of my year-end wraps. I talk about the digital card collecting apps, the Star Wars Card Trader. So over the next few weeks, I will be giving my top 5 Card Trader cards from Bunt.
Oh, cool.
Star Wars Card Trader and Marvel Collect.
Outstanding. Well, I'm looking forward to that and looking forward to talking with you both next week for episode 4. Thank you to Tom, Father Jimmy, and you for joining me on Coffee with Kenobi this week. The website is coffeewithkenobi.com for Star Wars news, announcements, reviews, videos, and more. As I mentioned at the top of the show, the official travel partner of Coffee with Kenobi is MEI and MouseFan Travel. Go to coffeewithkenobi.com/MouseFanTravel for your no-cost, no-obligation quote. They can help you plan your magical vacation for all Disney vacations, including the East and West Coast homes of Galaxy's Edge, Walt Disney World, and Disneyland. If you want to book a Disney cruise, MouseFan Travel can help. Becky Mankin and her team make things as easy as possible and give you that peace of mind we all appreciate when planning our family vacation. And speaking of cruises, you probably have heard me talk about this, but we are going on the Disney Wish. The Coffee with Kenobi family is going on the Disney Wish on June 16th to the 20th, 2025. There are still some spots available if you want to be a part of the Star Wars experience, which is the Disney Wish. It's the only cruise line to have a Disney Star Wars lounge. There is a Star Wars area for kids to play in, and it's just amazing. If you've ever been on a Disney cruise, it's the best food, it's the best experience, it's the best entertainment. And I'm not just saying that because I want you to join me, because of course I do. It really is amazing and magical. I would argue that a Disney cruise is the best Disney experience you can possibly have. And if you can join me and several members of the Star Wars and Coffee with Kenobi community, all the better. Go to coffeewithkenobi.com/DisneyWish. Again, for that no cost, no obligation quote. We'd love to have you join us. Come to our Coffee with Kenobi Facebook group, the CWK Cafe, at coffeewithkenobi.com/community for Star Wars thoughts, comments, reviews, and opinions in a family-friendly, spoiler and drama-free place. We always have spoiler-free, and then after a couple of days, spoiler-filled discussions of Skeleton Crew there as well. Coffee with Kenobi is possible because of the members of the CWK Alliance. Thanks to you, this podcast, the website, event coverage, and more come to life. Find out how you can help the show for as little as $1 a month by joining the CWK Alliance. As a member, you receive access to CWK Pour-Over, the exclusive weekly audio and video podcast not available anywhere else. Members at the CWK Alliance All-Star level receive a video edition of CWK Pour-Over as well. CWK Alliance Grandmasters can join me for a monthly live video call. So many opportunities to help out the show and get a lot of great exclusive things you can't get anywhere else. Find out more at coffeewithkenobi.com/CWK Alliance. 10% of your monthly contributions to the CWK Alliance go directly to the St. Jude Children's Hospital. Got a question or a comment? Email me, danz@coffeewithkenobi.com. You can find me on social media, such as X, Instagram, and Threads, and LinkedIn. Coffee with Kenobi is on social media, X, Instagram, Threads, Pinterest, and TikTok. Please give this show a like on Facebook at facebook.com/coffeewithkenobi, where you can subscribe to Coffee with Kenobi's YouTube channel, find over 700 videos, past live shows and events, and this show, this little podcast here. And if you get a chance, please take a couple of minutes to rate and review the show on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. It helps so many more people find this podcast in our community. If you want to get a t-shirt, sweatshirt, hoodie, mug, what have you, of the Coffee with Kenobi logo or the Christmas with Kenobi logo that we have on social media, go to coffeewithkenobi.com/shop. Thank you as always for joining me for a virtual cup of coffee. I appreciate your time and look forward to the next opportunity to talk Star Wars with you. I'm Dan Zehr, and I'm reminding you that this is the podcast you're looking for.
This podcast is not endorsed by the Walt Disney Company or Lucasfilm Limited. It is intended for entertainment and informational purposes only. The official Star Wars website can be found at www.starwars.com. Star Wars, all names, sounds, and any other Star Wars related items are registered trademarks and or copyrights of Disney and their respective trademark and copyright holders. All original content of this podcast is the intellectual property of Coffee with Kenobi unless otherwise indicated.
This is the podcast you're looking for.